Okay, good afternoon everyone, welcome. Can you hear me good enough without the microphone? Okay, wave if you can't hear me. How did you know to wave? You walked into that one. There's still a lot of space in front if you can't hear me at the back. Coolness. So today we're continuing with the SolidWorks stuff. And is there a question? Okay. So yesterday we looked at new part creation. And I showed you how to make a sketch. And we also looked at the extruded boss or base, as well as the revolved boss or base. So in today's class, I'm going to show you how to use the other tools, the swept boss and the lofted boss. So with extruded boss or base, we made a 2D profile and gave it some other thickness. With revolved, we made a 2D profile and gave it an axis to rotate around. Now with sweep or swept boss or base, what we're going to do is we're going to define a 2D sketch and a 3D path that it must follow. So let's quickly have a look at that. So to define the sketches, I'm first going to click on sketch and then sketch again. Then you have to select a plane on which you want to sketch. Now I'm just going to draw anything, basically some random shape. Okay, so that is a sketch that I just made. Pretty easy stuff, just click on sketch, sketch, and make a sketch. Now I'm just viewing it in 3D. Next what I'm going to do is I'm going to, on a plane not the same as the one that I made the sketch on now, I'm going to draw another sketch which is going to be a path for this sketch to follow. So on sketch again, we can now pick a plane by clicking on this menu at the top, which then shows us the other planes. So let's do one on the right plane. And to view perpendicular to the right plane, click on the view orientation tool and then right. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sketch some random profile. For that, I'll just use a spline. Spline is just a smooth curve through a number of points. And to end a spline, usually I just press the escape button. Okay, so that's just another 2D sketch, which gives my profile some other path to follow. Let's hope this works. Features, swept, boss or base, you'll see is now in color, so we can now select it. Click on swept, click on the profile, and then we click on the path. So it now causes that sketch to follow the path. You can set properties if you want, and you can cause it to spin around if you want. Many different options. Then you can just click on OK. So what it did now is it took my little profile and it swept it all along that path. Okay, so drawing random stuff is pretty useless, but where this thing is useful, I'm just deleting my sketches. Where this is very useful is when you want to draw a spring, like a circular spring. So a circular spring has a round cross section and it has a spiral to follow. So what we can do is we can draw the spiral first by going under Features, Curves, Helix, and Spiral. Now it says, select a plane on which to sketch a circle to define the helix cross-section. For this one, I'll just use the top plane, but obviously you can use any plane you want. So basically, this is the circle. If you look at the spring from the top, this is the diameter of the spring. So let's say we want it with a diameter of 140. And if we view it in 3D, you can see that the yellow line is now the spring that I can create. I can set the pitch, which is just the distance between one loop and the next one. And you can set the revolutions as well. Something like that. You could also set where it has to start. I usually just make that a 0. And you can set whether it must be clockwise or counterclockwise. Alright. Then when you're done, you click on OK. So I now sketched the path to follow. And now I'm just going to do a 2D circular profile over there. So sketch. I'm going to make a sketch on my right-hand plane. View normal to it. Okay, so now I have a 2D sketch of a circle, and I have a 3D path, which is my helix. Now all I need to do is Features, Swept, Boss or Base, click on the profile, and click on the path. So there I created a spring. Okay, interesting. Any questions up to this point? Cool. So creating an extruded boss or base allows us to define a 2D profile and give it a 3D depth. Revolved is a 2D sketch and an axis of revolution. Swept is a 2D sketch and a path to follow. And the next one, lofted boss or base. As the description says, it adds material between 2 or more profiles to create a solid feature. So for that you need 2 or more profiles. So I'm going to use sketch to sketch some or other profile. Let's view in 3D. So there's my first profile. Then I want to make another profile which is parallel to that one. So to make a parallel profile, not on the same plane but one parallel, we need to create our own new plane. To create a new plane, we click on Features, Reference Geometry, Plane. Then I'm going to reference my front plane and set the offset a certain distance. Okay, now I can go to Sketch again and click on this plane. Right, so now I have 2 2D sketches. Let's just hide this plane by clicking on it and then clicking on Hide. Right, so Features, Lofted Boss or Base, click on the first profile, click on the second profile. So then it fills up the volume in between them. Then you click on OK. So this is now a solid that goes from a square down to a circle. Now these things are typically used where you go from square to circle in aircon vents. So that's where you go from a square to a circular pipe. I'm just going to quickly delete this one and do it again. So you have two sketches. Click on loft, click on the first sketch and then on the second sketch. And you'll see it makes this line with the green dots on it. So this line actually tells me what point on the one sketch will be connected to what point on the other sketch. And if you want, you can actually go and drag these lines around. So now it will twist itself around. Obviously, if you go to the opposite side, it's going to twist through itself and then it won't work. Okay, it looks like one of those fancy art coffee tables. Okay, any questions? No questions? All right, you would have probably seen if you went on to ClickUp, everything that I did now is given in a small PDF document. So it just shows you where the tools are located and all of that. Right, so I had a request before class for me to quickly model a castle nut. So to do a castle nut, if you think about a castle nut, it's got a six-sided shape with a certain height and then a little crown on top of that. So let's start using an extruded parcel base where I will define the six-sided shape and give it a thickness. So extruded parcel base on the top plane, doesn't really matter, but now we can sketch a polygon. Click for the center, click for a point on the edge. Let's dimension that. And now you'll see these lines are still blue, so this polygon can be rotated. So what we could rather do, instead of having it free floating like this, I could add relations to the lines by clicking on a line. And once I click on it, a bunch of options appear. So this one will make it horizontal, that one will make it vertical. So if I click on that one, it made this line perfectly vertical, and now all the lines are black, meaning they can't be moved anymore. Then we click on OK. Set the thickness. Then click on OK again. That looks a bit big. To edit the height, you can just click on the name of the feature and then click on Edit Feature. Okay, that looks better. So now I have a six-sided prism. After this, usually with the nuts, the top corners are rounded. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make use of a revolved cut to cut all these corners around. So a revolved cut, I'm going to select my front plane. Remember, with a revolve, you have to draw a center line to show the rotation axis. To add a dimension between two lines that are not parallel, you can add the angle between them by clicking on the two, then typing the value. Now we click on OK. Right, that doesn't look too bad. Now after that, I'm going to do the castle part of the castle nut. So I'm going to use extruded parcel base to extrude a circle on top of this thing. Okay, something like that. So I now put a circle on top. Next, what I can do is I can cut the grooves for the split pin to go through. So for that, I'm going to use extruded cut. Select the plane. View normal to the plane. Draw the shape of the hole I'm going to cut out. Cut the hole out. Something like that. And now instead of doing that 3 times, I can use a pattern. So under linear pattern, there's an option called circular pattern. For the rotation axis, I'm going to use the cylinder. Features to pattern is my groove, and I want 3 of them. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, obviously, we don't want that many. Then click on OK. Okay, next what we need to do is we need to add threading inside of this castle nut. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do it the detailed way. So I'm going to physically cut the thread. So to do that, firstly I'm going to use an extruded cut on the bottom face to cut just the root diameter of the thread. So there I cut the root diameter of my threading out. Next what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a spiral out for the thread. So to do that, I'm going to do a helix and spiral. I want to make it on my top plane. And then click on OK. So that's how I'm cutting it out. Just make sure the direction is right. And if I'm happy, I click on OK. So there's my sketch for the path. Now I just do the 2D profile, which is just going to be like a triangle. Sketch on my right plane. Okay, so there is my 2D profile and 3D path. So features, swept cut, profile and path, and then click on OK. I'm just going to hide the helix because it looks weird there. Okay, something like that. Yeah. Okay, so the question now is, why in the one case does it make a volume and in the other case subtract a volume? So it was because with the first one, I used swept boss or base, and with the second one, I used the swept cut option. Next question. Cool. So with the boss, you add material, and then with the cut, you subtract material. Right, any questions? Yes. This was just an example, so that's why I used a triangle to cut the thread. The metric screw thread does actually use a triangle, but the tip, I think, is slightly blunted off a little bit. So it's not 100% right, but it's not far off. Right, that's a good question. So if I want to use these things in an assembly drawing, then obviously it's not necessary for me to draw in the whole spiral every time. Usually these spiral cutouts really destroy your computer's processing ability because the graphics has to solve each of those little lines the whole time. So this is the detailed way to do it, but it's actually not the correct way to do it if you're actually wanting to use them. So I'm just going to delete my threading that I cut there and delete that hole. Okay, so the correct way to actually do threading with SolidWorks is by means of the hole wizard. So under cuts, there's one called hole wizard. And under hole wizard, there are a couple of different ones. There's a counterbore, countersink, just a normal hole. And then that option there is called straight tap. So tap means cutting screw thread. So I'm going to click on straight tap. Make sure it's the IS standard. We want to use a M20 by 1.5. Must go through everything. So now I can set the position. So click on positions, click on a plane, and click to place the center of the tapped hole. Then you just click on OK. So basically what SolidWorks now did is it drilled out on my nominal diameter like I would typically do, but then instead of going and drawing the detailed spiral, it just uses this sketch line to indicate that there's a thread. If I view it directly from the side, these dotted lines actually also then show me that there's a thread. Right. So that's the way you would technically correct thread something in SolidWorks. But if you are at a company that manufactures castle nuts, then it would make sense to draw the detailed spiral because then it's of importance to you. Coolness. Any other questions? Nothing? Okay, so usually at this point I then ask for recommendations on something that I can try to draw for you to just kind of see what the program can do. So any recommendations? Oh, what? A pyramid. Sure. So now the question is how to draw a pyramid. Now I'm just going to do a normal square pyramid. So one option would be to use the extruded boss or base and just draw a box like that. So that's just a little cube. And then what I can do is I can cut away the sides of the pyramid on this plane. So something like that. So basically I'm cutting away the two sides, something like that. And then I just repeat the process for the other side. So I select the other plane, view normal to it. And cut it that way. So that will leave me with a pyramid. Mag wheel. Yeah, yeah. A mag wheel next, coming right up. So one property of a mag wheel that is quite easy to identify, or feature of the shape, is that it's symmetric about the rotational axis, or a big part of it is, the outside part, the round part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the revolved boss or base, select the plane, and then let's start. Okay, obviously I'm just guessing these dimensions at the moment. Give it a rotational axis. Okay, my wheel is not very well aligned. So to add a constraint to a sketch, you can click on one, then hold Control and click on another line. And then that allows you to add different constraints. For example, if I wanted this line and that line to be parallel, I could click on that line, hold Control, click on the other line, and click Make Parallel. If I want that point and that point to be on the same horizontal distance, I can click on Make Horizontal. Okay, that looks okay for now. So then I clicked on OK with the revolved boss. Right, so that's more or less there, but let's quickly do some spokes as well. So for spokes, I'm just going to cut it out over there. Extruded cut on this plane. View normal to it. Okay, I'm just going to cut off everything I don't want. Something like that. Let's round the corners. And then click on OK and OK again. So now I'm going to cut this thing out. Something like that. And we can do a circular pattern by clicking on the pattern, then circular pattern. Click for the axis, just select anything that's cylindrical. Features, under my part features there, we can expand and click on the extruded cut. And then click on OK. Next, let's quickly cut the holes for the nuts. Remember, you can also always drag a sketch anywhere you need. That looks okay for now. Click OK. Cut it out. So I can now go and do the whole circular pattern thing again. Or what I can do is I can take this circular pattern, click on it, and then click on Suppress. So that basically deletes it, but without forgetting about it. So click Suppress, then I'll take this one, drag it and drop it one above. Click on that one again, click on Unsuppress. Click on it, Edit Feature. Under Cut Extrude, just select Cut Extrude 6 as well. And then click on OK. So that's more or less how you would do a Mac.